Nice day today. Pleasant, not warm, especially here in the Northeast. I always thought of April as a month of transition weather-wise, but you know what? It really isn't. It really is now in these years that I've noticed that it really is May before the weather gets nice around here. It's 50s a lot in April, and when the day comes when I'm splitting time between Florida and New York, half the year and half the year, I don't see coming back before May because I just think April has just not been a great weather month. It really hasn't. You can tell that. May is pretty good. You can count on it. Most days going to get in the 60s and 70s. April, still very, very up and down. And even if you look the next couple of days in April, it's not going to be very good. That's the least of all worries, though. A good day for the stock market today. It's been a good week for the stock market. The stock market has rebounded very well. It has taken its cue from the Fed. There's no question. Uh, Congress sending the money out early, although I don't think it's enough money. The Fed really getting in there early in a very bold and very dramatic way and making the markets very liquid has clearly helped the stock market. And you've seen some companies do very well and they're responding. Amazon obviously is flying because their business is exploding. There are a couple other companies whose business is doing well too. Nobody's on the level of Amazon right now. And Amazon is just flying the last couple of days, up like 250 points the last 2 days. Uh, but I sense, and just as I came on the air, I saw this headline. Dr. Fauci says that we're not ready to open. We're not there yet. So you've seen plans the last couple of days from governors and the White House about reopening the economy. We can get into the whole big political mess like any of us care about whose job it is. That's right. They all look like stooges sitting there worrying about with what's going on in this world. We have our leaders. It just shows you what fools they are, sitting there wasting everybody's time worrying about whose call it is, like we care. Like we really care whose call it is. I mean, please. I mean, children. But he said that we have to have something in place that is efficient, that we can rely on, and it's not there yet. And he's talking about mapping and testing. We've heard about Apple and Google and using iPhones to do it and everything else. And I don't understand that technology and how that would work yet. But here's the bottom line. And I hate ever being negative because I'm by nature an extremely optimistic. I'm an optimistic person. I've always lived my life feeling like, you know what? Give me lemons, I'll make lemonade. I mean, that's just what I've always believed. Give me the deal, I'll figure it out. Give me something, and I'll make something out of it. That's how I've always, that's when life gave me a couple of twists and turns. I dealt with it. I mean, I think that's what you do in life. Everyone in recent days has been talking about Apollo 13 and what happened and how that's a good, story for us to use of success when things went wrong. I don't know if that's true. NASA was planning things and had such a good way of doing things that they were so smart. I don't know if any of us are as smart as NASA was then. And the fact that they could take this, if you remember the movie, and make this and make it look like this when they had a bunch of junk, if you remember, they were able to do that. It was a movie. It worked. We all know they got back. The bottom line is this. I think the markets have been overly optimistic. I think every day we're closed, we are doing damage that is going to be difficult to heal from, much tougher than people think. I think the underlying condition of our economy is much worse than people believe. And I keep hearing now everybody talking about the next phase while the numbers, us except Fauci, the numbers are staggering. We now have almost 600,000 cases in America, and we have 25,000 deaths. If you don't notice, we're dying at a rate of somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 people a day. And we're acting like, nah, everything's great. We got this under control now. What do we have under control? We have nothing under control. What do we have explain to me what we have under control. How many cases are we going to have? How many people are going to die? And if you throw this back open, explain to me how many people are going to get it and how many people then are going to die. And Fauci just said we have to have a plan. Okay. Does anybody have a plan? Has anybody seen a plan? I haven't seen a plan. Has anybody showed anything? Has Fauci put up a plan? Does anyone know what the plan is? I've never seen anything like this in my life. Now we're talking about, well, first of all, you have the president and the governors of the Northeast fighting over who's in charge, which is comical. Fools. All of them fools, like we care. Number two, like we really care whose call it is. You know what? It's nobody's call. This is a economy that business does what it wants. Here's how good both your edicts are. If you announce the economy is open and Apple announces, I don't want any of my North American employees in a store until June, they're not in a store. Their business stays closed. And any other business that does the same thing is in charge of their own business. So this is a free economy. This is a private business world. No one tells these companies what to do. They're in charge of themselves. Now, you can tell them to go home, and stay there. You can tell us to do. You can tell us to stop, which the states did. The president didn't. The states did. The governors did. That's fine. You can't tell somebody to open. The companies will do what they want to do. When they feel comfortable, when they feel that they can keep their employees safe, they'll open. When they feel they can keep their companies safe and their customers safe, they'll open. And that goes for the NBA, and that goes for the NHL, and that goes for Major League Baseball. Do you think the governors or the president are going to tell the NBA when to open? Or tell Major League Baseball when to open? They're not. When these people will feel that their constituency, their clients, their customers, their players, their employees are safe, they will open for business. But explain to me this, the all clear, that the governors are going to give their individual states or the president is going to waive an all clear. What has to happen to get that all clear? Why doesn't someone come on instead of worrying about who's in charge and spending 2.5 hours telling us, I was first, I knew it, I'm refuting this story, I'm refuting that story, which none of us care about, while people are dying, while people can't eat, while people have no money. That's what's going on. Shame on all of you. Shame on all of you. Do you think any of us care who's in charge? And who gets to say go? Explain this to us. What does go mean? What has to happen? What plan? We have to have something in place that is efficient, that we can rely on. What is that? Have Fauci come up there today and tell us what that is. What has to be efficient? What do we have to do? Nobody has told us what has to happen for us to get back to our lives. You know why? Because they don't know what it is. Testing, we can't test everybody. They don't have, I saw the guy this morning on TV who said, here's the big secret that no one gets to. They don't have the agents, the liquid agents in the tests. There isn't enough to basically make all the tests that the world needs now, because they never needed that much of it, and it can't be produced that quickly. It'll take months to produce massive amounts of tests because they've run out of everything. And that was from one of the leading doctors who is involved with these tests. And he said, hey, that's the big secret. We need a canal of this stuff now, and we don't have it. So we're not testing everyone. We've tested nobody. And we can't test everybody. It can't be done reasonably. So you're going to do mapping or do marking. What does that mean? How does it work? Do you do it at home? Do you do it at your office? Where do you do it? Do you do it at schools? Who does it and how? Somebody give somebody a plan. You know what? They don't have any plans. They're going to convene a group, and the group's going to say what? No one has ever given anybody anything that resembled a plan this entire time. All they've done is bicker and watch as the numbers get staggering. The deaths are now 25,000 Americans have died. The number goes up by thousands every day. And you act like we're out in the clear? We're not in the clear or anything. And I see today, listen, did I like that the market went up today? Yes. But do I think it's realistic? No. Because they went up on the idea that we're soon going to get back to some sense of normalcy. Really? How? How are you going to feel safe getting on the subway, getting on the train, getting on a bus, going to a movie, going to a game, going to a Broadway show, going to a concert? How are you going to feel safe in the elevator that's packed? What has changed that's going to make you feel better? The virus is just as contagious. We don't even know if the virus backs off by temperature. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal today about that. They're not even sure this virus, as strong as it is, backs off from temperature. Usually viruses of this kind back off at 72 degrees. They're not even sure this one does, according to what I read this morning. 600,000 cases, 25,000 dead, almost 2,000 cases in the world, 2 million cases in the world now, and 122,000 dead. The numbers pile up by the day, and we act like it's over. It's not over. We haven't accomplished anything yet. And we're all tired of being home, and the economy does need to open. We all know that. It's getting wrecked. But understand this. When we start to edge back out there, and edge will be the optimum word, there's a lot of risk involved. Maybe to someone you love, maybe to you or me, who knows? Sometimes we have to accept the risk. Do I think staying closed is an alternative? I do not. Do I understand there's a lot of risk involved there? Did I say to my brother today, John, thank God you can just sit home and go to the beach in the summer down where you live and not have to worry about this? I'm happy for that. Yeah, I am. Am I happy that people that I care about don't have to get involved in this and go to work every day? Yeah, I am. Because I don't know what the answer is. And I feel for you if you have to get back on the LIR, or back on the subway train, because I don't know what's going to be there for you. And you know what? Neither does anybody else. And the guys holding the press conferences, they don't have any clue either. They're playing this without a script, and it sure shows. Now, on a sad note, Hank Steinbrenner died today. You probably have heard that already at the age of 63. Hank never really when Hal and Hank took over, Hank really never was comfortable. When he was out front, he wasn't made for it. He was basically a straight shooter who said a lot of things that were, tough to say as a front man. I don't know him very well. I interviewed him a couple of times when he was available in those years. It probably wasn't easy being George Steinbrenner's son. There were probably a lot of good things about it. Well, there were a lot of good things about it, wealth-wise. There were probably a lot of tough things about it. He was a man that clearly had his philanthropic side and did a lot of good things. started that baseball team for the for the kids from the wrong side of the tracks, and did some nice charity work. Understandable. Had some demons. We all know that. You know what? Most of us do have some. Very few of us have no demons. He had his good times and his bad times. I mean, that's basically it. The team was never for him. He liked the horses. He liked Ocala. Died in Clearwater, surrounded by his family, had 4 kids. Like I said, didn't know him very well. 63 is young. Suffered from an illness. It was not a virus deal. He had, I guess, a fairly lengthy illness. And he's gone at the age of 63. We're getting closer to the draft. There's a lot of stories about that, too, to deal with. We'll sprinkle in some sports today with everything else. Kim Jones, we're going to check in with her in a couple of minutes. We'll be back after this. Kim, welcome. How are you?
Mike, how you doing?
Good. How's life?
Everything's kind of the same as probably the last time we talked. I'm ready for some major progress here.
Yes, I think
we'd all welcome that.
I think everybody is. Hank Steinbrenner. Now you were with the you did the Yankee beat for
Yep.
I don't know how many years. You have to
7.
remind me. 7. Okay. Those were some of his years. You must have had some time interviewing him, or some time when he was visible in those years.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me something that you remember about Hank Steinbrenner.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Mike, it was more during spring training. I would see him when we were, everyone down in Tampa at the facility and everything. And I just remember him being kind and, short conversations. But I remember him in the cafeteria. I can picture him there and a conversation with him there. And I was sad to hear, obviously, of his passing. I didn't realize he had been battling it.
Neither did I.
And young. I mean, 63
Yes.
is very young.
Yeah.
So
it is to me. I'll tell you that much.
It is to all of us.
Yes.
So I very sad. And then you learn the details that it had been a lengthy illness, which I guess the family obviously put in its statement. So certainly my condolences to the family. It has a feeling right now, Mike, of sort of one thing after another, almost all bad news. And, it's really a shame right now, just bigger than one incident, but also, of course, the passing of Hank is very sad as well.
Yes, and, I'm sure, like I said, I remember the years where he took one of the years where he took an active role. You could tell that and I don't remember which year it is, but he made the rounds, and within a couple of days he was gone. They kind of shut him. They shut him down. I mean, he clearly wasn't cut out for that. Now, I heard he had a very philanthropic side, and he did a lot of nice things with the money he had. But he clearly was not made for being a front man, because he spoke his mind, and he was going to create a lot of headlines.
I was just going to say, perhaps he was, in terms of his public persona, a little bit more like his father in terms of being outspoken and that sort of thing. And as we know, Mike, that stuff has changed over the years. I mean, take the particulars in this instance of the Steinbrenner family out of it. Generally speaking, I don't know that we've become kinder and gentler in that respect, but we've certainly become a little bit less boisterous. Generally speaking,
no question.
In that respect, because when it happens now, it's enormous news, So I think that fairly quickly it was, and I'm not speaking for anyone here, this is just my recollection, that Hal and Hal's, mannerisms, his persona, I should say, his personality is probably the better word, was maybe better and was better suited for that role. But certainly all of the Steinbrenners, I mean, I remember, seeing Jenny an awful lot, and other family members an awful lot. There was no doubt that the family deeply invested in that franchise, and I certainly understand that's not uncovering any new ground. But when you ask me my recollections from back then, which, I have to search my mind for to some degree these days, I remember the entire family being very visible at those times, particularly in Tampa, and then obviously at Yankee Stadium.
I'm talking with Kim Jones on this Tuesday, the 14th of April. We're a little more than a week from the draft, which will be obviously something we all can, at least in sports, point to for a couple of days. It'll give us something to talk about as we get a little closer to it, and that's where we are headed right now. Kim made the point of saying that there isn't a lot of outspoken people anymore. That is so true. I mean, I've had two people I'm close to say to me, I can't come on right now because they've shut us all down. They don't want us to speak during this time.
Right.
They'd rather we not comment on anything during this time because nobody knows what's going to happen. So
Right.
they don't want anybody from any organization even speaking right now because they just, they don't want people giving their opinions on what they think should happen. So, I mean, because nobody has a plan and nobody knows what's going on. So it just shows you how everybody is so careful right now that nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, so that's kind of the way this last month or so has gone. So you couldn't be more right about that. Is that people have shut down, really shut down. Unless you're Charles Oakley, they have shut down completely. I mean, Charles Oakley, though I see finds time to chat. I'm alluding to the fact that I heard today. That he was attacking Ewing in an interview and everything else. So
Why?
yeah,
Patrick,
so
why?
oh, just as I guess because he was running out of targets. I guess he did an interview and he was
Patrick was next on the list. I wouldn't pick on Patrick.
I guess so. I just that happened today. So Oak keeps going, but other than that, everybody else has been pretty quiet. I was looking at the daily draft stuff, and now it's always the quarterback of the moment rumor.
Always.
But now you have this thing of could Herbert slip? Could he slide in front of Tua because of the Tua injury situations? Have the Dolphins had a change of heart because of the fact they can't get enough medical information? Blah, 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 blah. So, you know what? I don't know the answer. We'll find out, I guess, next week.
Mike, you're reading my mind from earlier today, some text messages I was exchanging. This is now, Tua is now the intriguing part of this draft.
No
and
question.
Certainly of next Thursday night. I don't have any doubt about that. And to your point, Mike, I reached out to someone today who I've been in contact with not only during this draft process, but over years of time. He is an offensive-minded coach, and I'll leave it there. But I said to him, I was running some things by him because I'm trying to become a little more relevant in this time right now, Mike. I'm trying to I can't get on TV. It's very hard. And trying to do some other things. So I might, write a notebook, that kind of thing. So I've just been reaching out generally to some folks.
Right.
I said, what do you think of this if it's my quarterback draft order? Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Love, Hurts, Eason. And we can get to the bottom two if you care. I don't know if you do.
I do. Yeah, I do.
But he corrected me, and he said, other than I had Tua below Herbert, other than that, I think you're spot on. Think about that, because you could quit. We could spend much more time than we'd need to necessarily on Hurts and Eason, although I also find Hurts incredibly intriguing. But the idea that Herbert has passed Tua is something that I feel like is almost being accepted in NFL circles. I find that part of it absolutely amazing.
I'm a big Tua guy. I always have been, but I understand and that you're looking at, number one, a guy who has been incredibly brittle, who is not a big man, who has been incredibly brittle, and who has an injury that guys I know say, hey, there's at least a 15, 20% chance that hip is a problem. So, I mean, looking at that, the other kid's a 6'6" kid, who's strong
big
and
kid.
big and the whole thing, and is a given physically versus Tua, who, yes, I mean, I think, and listen, I cannot dispute anything Burrow did. Burrow last year had a year that you can rank in college, and you can make a declaration that is probably the finest year that anybody has ever played in college football. I mean, you can make that case. Considering the playoff games, probably the finest year that anybody has ever had going back to, I don't care if you want to go to Jerry Rome, I don't care if you want to go to Roger Staubach, I don't care who you want to go to, Herschel Walker, anybody you want, Barry Sanders. You're talking about maybe the greatest year ever played in college football. So I can't dispute that. I think Tua's a better quarterback. Now, let's see if it proves out through the years in the pros. But Burrow's made for Cincy, so I know he belongs there. I mean, he's made for Cincy, so we know he's going there. But it'll be interesting to see because you have the injury stuff with Tua, but he's got a very high upside. Then you got Herbert, and now you have Love, who some people have going as high as 7 or 8 in the draft.
Yeah, and others saying that he's dropping toward the bottom of the first round. I am very much going to have to see that drop to believe it, because at the Combine, Mike, I reported that a coach that I talked to there right after the drills told me that he can see Love being compared to a poor man's Mahomes. Now, I looked at the guy, kind of with my hands up. I said poor man's. I will say this, though. A poor man's Patrick Mahomes is still at the very least, a top 15 quarterback in this league eventually. I'm sorry, he just is. There's not going to be another Mahomes. But if you're talking about someone, angles, movement, the way that he can deliver the ball uniquely, that he can capture some of that, he's going to need to be coached up. He's going to need a little bit of patience. And what you have to understand when you look at him clearly only by the numbers is he had 9 different starters around him this past season, a new head coach and a new scheme. Who among us would thrive in that environment, for an entire season? So that's why his numbers, especially the interceptions, that is one reason they were up for his last year at Utah State compared to the year before. So I think the NFL understands that. I think anything you say right now that can be equated in any way, shape, or form to Pat Mahomes, and I'm not kidding when I say this, I think people are going to grab onto like it's a life raft and see if they can make it work.
He's the league. I mean, he is the prototype player. There's no question. He is the prototype for the next 10 years in the league. There's no question. We're talking with Kim Jones. But if you have a scenario here, first of all, we know there's hungry teams, and quarterbacks make everybody hungry. We know that.
Yes.
And so you have the Lions sitting there. They cannot. Patricia has to win this year. He has a quarterback he cannot get rid of because the salary cap hit would be off the charts. I think it's $30-something million. So it's
enormous.
Yes,
I know that.
It cannot happen. And he's a good player anyway. So we know that. So they can trade out of that pick and still get the player they want, which is the corner, but who cares, whoever it is. The point is, if somebody jumps into 3, like the Dolphins, to make sure they get the quarterback of their dreams and takes Herbert, now all of a sudden the Giants are going to get so many offers at 4 for somebody who's going to say, oh, my God, Tua's on the board. We got to get in front of the Chargers, who are going to take Tua at 6. Now, all of a sudden, the Giants are in play as to maybe making a trade because somebody's going to be looking to get in there if Tua's ever on the board at 4.
Well, this is the prime draft for Dave Gettleman to move back. If he doesn't in this draft, and I don't know how, he may have 10 more drafts in him. He may not. I don't know that. But he'll never move back if he doesn't in this draft. If he's going to tell us he's absolutely in love with one of the 4 tackles, and he has great conviction about that player above the other 3, I guess in that way he could justify it. But Mike, this is the perfect trade back scenario for the Giants. We just haven't seen it. We've never seen it from Dave Gettleman. But you're right. You're right.
I mean, if a quarterback is going off the board again, and you now have the quarterbacks going off the board 1, 3, and 4, and then you have Love sitting there anyway, and you know that. So the bottom line is you have premier draft defensive players, which you have.
One of them.
Well, Young's going second. We know that, but then you have obviously Simmons, and you have the corner, and you have the Auburn kid.
You're going to have Javon Kinlaw, absolutely,
and then you have the four tackles,
right.
Of which I like the Iowa kid the best myself. I mean, I like I like Iowa kids anyway. Number one. Plus, I think I like a guy who's really the Louisville kid's too big for me. I mean, I don't like him.
Well, he's good, Mike.
I don't like him that big. I would rather have the athletic.
Really well,
I'd rather have the other kid who's 320 pounds. He's not small, and he's a wrestler, and he's a tough kid, and this and that. I would prefer him myself, but I'll be fascinated to see which one. If the Giants take a tackle, which one they take will fascinate me. It really will.
I would guess Wirfs. I think that combine workout, got a lot of eyes on him, perhaps separating him.
I would think him. I mean, that was a guy I would take myself. But again, what the Giants will usually, especially Gettleman, usually does something I don't expect to happen. So,
here's a guy to. I agree. Here's a guy to look for, Mike. A little bit later, but maybe not as late as some folks think, and that's that second layer, that second tier of offensive tackle, which is still pretty good. Ezra Cleveland out of Boise. He also has a wrestling wrestling background.
Right.
He's feisty. He's a quality player. When you see him, when you see Austin Jackson out of USC, Josh Jones out of Houston, there's a kid out of USC whose name at the moment escapes me. Those guys suddenly are going to move up, I think, because enough teams in this league can use a tackle. Now, they also may be viewed in enough of a group that someone is more patient and wants to wait till mid to late second round. I'm not sure how many of them are going to be left, though. There is that second tier here that's pretty good. But Ezra Cleveland, he fascinates me a little bit because of his background. You remember Stephen Neal, the great offensive lineman who, was a college wrestler.
Yes.
And ends up having a great career. Now, I believe he retired.
I like wrestlers.
So.
Wrestlers make good. They usually,
do.
Yes, they good.
They're
and I like
quick,
guys.
Their hands.
And I like guys a little nasty too. And this
Yep.
kid's a little nasty. That's why I like Wirfs. Plus, I like guys that come from Iowa. They're good players. They're sound. The coach is a very sound guy.
Well, yeah.
He makes good linemen. He makes good tight ends. He's good at that stuff.
Yep.
So I like them. But again, it's going to be interesting to see what's on the board. And then when the Jets get the pick, you're going to have a couple of offensive linemen left, and you're going to have all those wide receivers to fool around with. And now you got that whole wide receiver band, and they might be able to get all of them. I mean, they might have all of them on the board when they pick. So it's possible. Maybe one's gone, maybe one's not. I don't know. I can't even get anybody to give me a consensus of who they think the best one is, to be honest with you.
Yeah, my sense is Lamb, in some ways separates himself a little bit, just his all-around game. My hope, and I said this on NFL Network a few weeks ago when I was last on, I want Arizona, even after the Hopkins trade, to take Lamb, because I want them to give Kyler a receiving core where they are just daring defenses to figure out how the heck to deal with all of those weapons, including a quarterback who can get out and motor. So I think that.
Well, how
would be
about
a lot
Ruggs
of
too?
fun.
Ruggs might be as fast as Hill. I mean, he is like scary
Ruggs
fast.
is fast.
Yeah.
Oh, he's really very fast.
And Judy's a really classy
he's a great route runner.
Yeah,
and
very
great receiver.
classy. Very classy.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
and
a good
there's
group.
Lot
Very
right
good group.
Beyond
yes.
them.
Yes.
I mean, they may be the three. They're the three consensus. Top of the group. But there's an awful lot of guys not far behind.
No, and they say it's a very deep group. So the Jets could get a tackle and then come right back in the middle of the round, trade up and get a wide receiver. It's not crazy.
I tell you what's going to be interesting for Joe Douglas and the Jets. That pick at 68 that they got for Leonard Williams. In this draft, Mike, they should get a player that from day one is a starter for them at 68 overall.
Oh, I would agree.
No excuses.
Yeah,
they absolutely should get a day one impact starter. Now, rookies struggle sometimes. They have to acclimate. I get that. But that should be an impact player for the Jets this season.
So you think from what you hear, you think the fourth quarterback goes off the board pretty early?
I do. I think that we could. I said at the Combine I thought we'd have 5 in the first round. Now my fifth would be Eason, the big arm kid out of Washington State.
Right.
And he had a great.
And then you
workout.
have the kid who's a wonderful kid, which you like to talk about, and Pioli talked about the other day, which is Hurts, and he's had a great career. I mean, let's be honest, the guy's he's been a winner, he's been a great teammate, the whole thing, and he has improved himself, and everyone talks very highly of him.
Very highly of him. Confident, but it comes off like it's very natural to him, and that kind of confidence plays well in locker rooms. It plays well, I think, in society. I mean, I just think there's a lot to like about Jalen Hurts, where I think a few months ago people were talking about him much later in this draft. Nothing, unless he goes in the top 20 picks, Mike, and I don't think he will. Nothing would surprise me about Hurts in this draft.
All right, let me ask you this.
If I'm Baltimore, I think about him, by the way, because think about him as, as a backup and one. They don't need a 1-2 punch because they have Lamar, but certainly as someone who could fill in there in some very intriguing situations.
Oh no, yeah, you could use him a lot. I mean, use him on 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s, and yes, absolutely. I mean, he could be very useful in that role. I could see him playing for Belichick, too.
Yep.
I could see that in a heartbeat. I could see Belichick having a lot of fun like that because, remember, he did with Flutie. He had a lot of fun when he had Flutie.
Yep, and he would love Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think he would like that a lot. And there's no question that is a distinct possibility. The other thing is, and you would be more attuned to this than I would be, is there any chance that Washington is really just blowing smoke, and that they're thinking about a quarterback at 2 that they're in love with?
No,
I don't think there is, and I think Rivera is
is
committed to Young. But is there any? When I had one of the NFL guys on recently, and he said to me, "Well, they just want to make sure they don't pass on a great player."
Right.
At quarterback.
Yeah, I think I heard Albert tell you that.
Yeah, it was Albert who told me that. That's right. And
yeah.
I said, and again, I think Tua can be that player, but he is injury prone. But I think Rivera is completely committed to Chase Young, completely, because I don't even think he wants to play a young quarterback anyway. So I think he wants to just build his defense and play a veteran quarterback. So I don't think he wants a rookie anyway. So that's why I think he will never let Young go past him.
Here's what I reported on NFL Network in Week 16, Mike. I was told by a high-ranking member of the Redskins organization that whoever their coach became, because they had fired Gruden but had yet to hire Rivera, whoever their head coach was going to take the job with the understanding that Dwayne Haskins was the starting quarterback. I do not know of anything that has changed since then. So based on my own reporting in a conversation I had one-on-one with a high-ranking member of the Redskins, I think Dwayne Haskins undoubtedly, that barring injury, is their quarterback in
And I
Week
think
1.
he should be. And I think he should be.
Listen, the thing about Haskins, the way he was handled, the way that, to some degree, the way Jay Gruden talked about him and approached playing him, which was not with much enthusiasm, kind of crystallized what other people thought of him. He got into a game, he wasn't ready to play. We understand.
And then
all
later
of
in the
that.
year, he played well.
That's what I was going to say.
He did, except
later
throwing that one wacky pass in the
Yes.
Eagle game, which covered the point spread and drove everybody crazy.
Yes.
Except for that, he played really well in that game.
Yes, he did. He played well in that game. I was there. He has an absolute cannon. I mean, if they can, if he gets in the right scheme, is handled the right way, obviously does his part, my goodness, Mike, they could have something there. This idea that Dwayne Haskins is this bust that has to be replaced speaks only to our impatience. It doesn't really speak much to Dwayne Haskins,
I agree with
to be
that.
honest with you.
I completely agree with that. We're talking with Kim Jones, and it's funny. Rivera could really quickly turn that team around because that defense could be markedly better. You look at if this kid's half of what everyone says he is, and I'm not as high on him because I just saw him in the wrong games because I saw some games where he just didn't impress me, where I just kept looking for him and he wasn't making any plays, and that happens. I remember it happening to Lawrence Taylor. So I'm in college, so it happens. But I just think if he's anywhere near half as good as everyone says he is, he will really fit in well there with Ron Rivera.
Well, I think if you think of him as part of a front seven, Mike, that has Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, who I've said
who's a very good player, very good player.
The best really good player in the NFC East that none of us ever
very
talked
underrated
about.
player.
For 8 years, none of us ever talks about Ryan Kerrigan.
Yes.
If you think of him in that kind of a unit with Jack Del Rio, and we know Ron Rivera, obviously a great defensive mind, but Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator there, it's hard to imagine the kid failing, Mike, because he is talented. This is a young man who's from the area, from the Washington, D.C. area, who's had some counsel already with LeBron, for whatever that's worth. LeBron's a fan and has, counseled him to some degree. This is a guy who, whatever plays he made at Ohio State, he was the best player on the field making them. I don't doubt that his talent is at a very high level, but he initially won't be the best player on that defense. There are too many veterans there that have done something, and if they can all stay healthy, you're talking about a front seven that's going to be murder. For these teams to deal with, again, with proper coaching, which I'm willing to grant Rivera and Del Rio are going to come through in that regard. But if they stay healthy, you're talking about an incredibly talented front seven.
And what do you think
by the way, on the back end, very happy.
And what do you think about the Giants' offense versus defense? You think they take the tackle or they take a defensive player?
I think they take the tackle. I think they take the tackle. I think the Simmons thing is going to be very, very interesting. I may have already told you this, but I talked to Thomas Davis at the Combine. He was there, part of a I'm not exactly sure why Thomas Davis was there, by the way, but he can be wherever he wants, I suppose. But when he was in the, I think, 2005 draft, he was a hybrid safety linebacker, and there was some question with him. So to a degree, he can understand the Simmons stuff. He's lived it. He told me he thinks he's a weak side linebacker. Now, that doesn't mean he's in every, a roll your eyes, just another weak side linebacker. He may be the best one in the league at some point. But, if you're talking about a weak side linebacker, I have to believe for the Giants solidifying an offensive line so they can finally get what they need to get out of Barkley and, obviously give Daniel Jones every chance. I have to believe that's the direction they go.
Yeah, linebacker has become, like running back, a position that has been devalued. There's no question about it. It has, because not many guys are going to be on the field for 3 downs. There's very few schemes that are going to have guys on the field for 3 downs. So that's become part of it. Unless you're going to be a guy who's going to get a ton of sacks, or just as that special guy who can do everything. Who can cover people and cover tight ends and come up and play in the box. I mean, unless you're that special guy and you're going to be that versatile in every down, that position has gotten devalued a little bit. So I agree with you. It's harder to take that player if he's not that killer guy who just is that special. So if you get a guy who you think can be a 10-time Pro Bowler, he can walk in and be Zach Martin. If a guy can walk in and do that, I mean, I don't like to throw Anthony Munoz's name around, but I mean, if you want to be somewhere in between, and Zach Martin's really good. I mean, as we know. So if you can be anywhere near that good, just be a guy who's an all-star every year, or a guy you don't have to ever think about for the next 10 years. That's good enough. I mean, that's what you want to get out of that pick. You want that pick to be a guy who you can write in his name for the next 8 or 9 years and not think about it.
Well, and you also want your offense to have an identity where it can succeed. I mean, last year was all about Saquon. Every defense that played the Giants came in wanting to stop Saquon and, frankly, not worried about many of the other weapons.
That's
Not really worried about them, honestly.
No.
There's no indication that's going to dramatically change, although if you want to say to me, well, Daniel Jones will probably be better, I'll concede that. I'm fine with that.
I think he can be. I think he can be.
Why not solidify a line where the running back that you spent an absolute premium pick on, and the clock is ticking on that contract.
And it's now, yes.
You gotta let him do what he can do.
Yes.
Because he's the Giants' best chance.
And by 5 years, he's old, because running backs are old at 5 years, especially guys who get a lot of carries. They're old after 5 years, so that clock is running. So I agree with you. It makes plenty of sense. It does, and you could trade back, or you might be in love with someone at that position. But the quarterbacks, what we learn all the time is that 9 times out of 10, the quarterbacks go. That's all there is to it. I mean, they find a way of going one way or the other. That's just the way it works.
I heard someone talk about Jake Fromm today, Mike. I mean,
no,
and I don't want to be a bad guy here, but
no
Jake
chance.
Fromm at the combine in terms of just the arm,
no chance.
He's throwing right after Eason. It was not a great comp there for him. If we get to that point in this first round,
no way.
This draft will absolutely be off the hinges. I don't think we will.
I don't
think so. But if we should, that would be crazy with a capital K.
That makes no sense. Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree, but
absolutely,
I heard it,
yes.
and I
and listen, I'm never shocked by any quarterback going in the first round. I mean, that's just the way it is. Quarterbacks can get elevated 2 rounds in the drafts. We all know that. I mean, we know it all the time. It's such a hard position to fill. So that happens, and guys fall in love. We know that. But that one would really surprise me. That one would surprise me a lot, And then the other thing is, you're wondering about, I can pass because next year – there is the next Peyton Manning is sitting there, and everyone knows it.
And then there will be Fields.
And Lawrence is a can't miss Pro Bowl, all pro. Listen, if you want to tell me right now that barring something strange, he has a 15-year NFL career, I'll say yes right now. He is as automatic as Luck or Aikman or Peyton Manning were to be a success in the NFL. Absolutely.
Oh, and would have been viewed that way, as you know, Mike, after last season.
Yes.
I mean, there's no doubt that he is the one that he's the prototype.
Can't miss.
He's right. I would agree with you 100%, and they talk about him constantly.
Yeah, can't miss.
People in the NFL mention him,
Yes.
you know, not these days. I mean, these days they have an
Let's
NFL,
be honest. He's going to be like,
plate, but generally speaking, yes.
Yeah, Luck,
already on radars. Yeah.
Luck, Aikman, Elway came out with that. And it's funny, Manning didn't come out with that grade, but Luck, Aikman, and Elway came out with that grade where they were Hall of Fame grades. I mean, that was it, basically. And they all were Hall of Fame players. That's basically it. I mean, Luck's not going to get there because of the injuries, but they all had Hall of Fame grades. And this guy's going to have a Hall of Fame grade. That's what he's going to have. He's going to have a Hall of Fame grade. That's how good he is. We know that. And he's got the size. He's 6'6". He's got the whole thing. He's got the whole package. He can run.
He can run. Yep.
Yeah, there's nothing he can't do. I mean, he's that special. Everyone knows it. Yeah, he's the real deal. There's no question.
Yeah. If anyone was worried that next year's draft won't be quarterback driven, they don't need to worry about that.
That goes without saying. So what are you going to do for the draft? Like how? What are you going to do this year? Now you'd be the one who would be allowed to. Are you allowed to go?
No.
Okay.
No.
Even someone like you can't go, even though
no one's going anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, the commissioner will be in.
I know, in a
Westchester
bunker.
County.
Yes.
You know, I mean.
So no one, even someone like you for an NFL can't even go. Okay.
No.
So there's no there. Nobody goes.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I would plan to be ready if needed, but frankly, the draft this year is so ESPN driven. The ESPN NFL Network tandem has done the draft, but we can't. Our folks in Culver City, California, can't even be in the building right now.
Gotcha.
So everything is in Bristol. They're ready to rock and roll. They got everything going on there. So this will be heavy ESPN. I do think some of our folks will at least have a presence. Like I said, I will just make myself ready, in the event, but it would be highly unlikely.
Gotcha.
I would be part
so
of that
ESPN
coverage.
Gets the call with all their people this year. They get the call.
For the most part. I mean, I think you're still going to see Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah.
Right.
I don't have the full list in front of me. I think maybe another person or two from our place.
And the players will be virtually interviewed, right? Is that it?
Susie Kolber will do those interviews, from what I understand. I think 58 will have whatever that contraption/camera is.
Right.
They will have that capability. So 58, so that'll be 2 rounds full, basically. Ideally. I mean, someone may fall, obviously, but so that'll be a lot, and that'll be great. It'll be nice to see them, but my sense is they'll be told, and they will understand how many people can be there. I mean, you're not going to see, in the past, Mike, we've seen draft gatherings at people's homes where, 8 people are on a couch.
Yeah, that's over with.
16 people are standing right behind them. We're not going to see that.
After the reaction that Prescott and the Cowboys got, that was a big. That one really they got hit hard with that one, and they deserved it. Listen, you know what? You can't be that tone deaf to what's going on in the world. You just can't. You have to understand that when you get the position you have, there comes some civic responsibility. You just have to you just have to understand that. Sorry, you have to understand it. That's all there is to it. I understand your age. I understand the whole thing. Boys will be boys, but the bottom line is you can't be that tone deaf to what's going on in the world. You just can't.
Right, and it's going to gain attention, and because the rest of us aren't doing it. And absolutely, I understand. We live in strange times, Mike.
No, we live in the strangest of times. I mean, we live in
that this passes at some point. But
no, we live in the weirdest of. None of us can even. I mean, there's no even way to describe it. What we're going through. I mean, there really isn't. It's just, and from a sports standpoint, I would think. I mean, people ask me this every day, and I say, I don't know. And they're like, "What's going to happen?" To basketball this year. I'm like, I don't know. What's going to happen to hockey? I don't know. What's going to happen to baseball? I said, well, baseball's going to play. Sometime they're going to play some games somewhere. I think. I mean, but NBA and hockey, I'm starting to get the feeling like they're done. I really do. I mean, I
would tend to agree.
Yeah,
that's the feeling we get. I have no information, of course, but
it's painful. But you're starting to get, when they start talking about a month to get ready.
Yes, that's the
it becomes a little crazy. You start to get towards, well, what about next year? It's like yeah. I mean, it's a bizarre situation. So from that standpoint, it's a different draft for everybody, including you. So no access to anything for this draft this year.
No, and we haven't been at the Giants facility. We do talk to Joe Judge tomorrow via conference call. That'll be the first time we speak to him. Other than the combine, he spoke to us. And obviously his introductory press conference. So tomorrow's Joe Judge. So that, listen, it puts something on your calendar. I mean, that's kind of the way it is right now. And then Friday, Chris Pettit and Dave Gettleman will do pre-draft. And then I presume next week, Joe Douglas from the Jets will do pre-draft. So, you kind of just mark your calendar.
And how about you?
Considering
Considering what you went through, is there any extra precautions you have to take because of what you went through last year?
Well, I mean, I would be on the
high risk,
pre-existing condition.
Right.
Not a great idea to get the virus.
So you got to take care. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and I have been. I have folks really looking. It's been
Good.
touching.
Good.
You hear from neighbors. Do you need anything?
I would think the same thing. People got to worry about you right now because
Right.
yes, you don't want anybody who's got any past
Right.
history. You worry about it right now because
Yeah.
we've heard of too many people.
It would be-
who are younger and who have been hit by this thing. It's hit a lot of people.
Yeah, it definitely has.
It really has. All right.
Yep.
So listen, be well. We'll talk.
Thank you.
We'll talk after the draft or maybe
I look forward
before.
to it, Mike. Thanks very
you.
much.
Take care.
Okay.
Goodbye. Kim Jones, doing what we do, just basically whiling away the days. So this year with the draft, which she would be a big part of, I didn't know how they were dealing with the announcers. Now I learned that ESPN is going to have mostly their people involved and just a smattering of the NFL network. Usually they both do the competing. See, it used to be ESPN owned the draft. And then when the NFL Network started and they started their own round-the-clock network, well, the draft became a huge part of their deal. So ESPN had to share the draft with the NFL Network. So there was some competition there. Now, this year, the NFL wants to take care of its partner. So they back out of the way and let ESPN, which needs something in the worst way. They're ESPN. They throw around billions of dollars to these leagues. They need something to call their own. So they get the... They're going to have everyone tuned into them this week, so they get the draft. So they've given a little nod to the NFL Network and taken a couple of their announcers to give them some visibility, but this is an NFL production. And that's why it leaves people like Kim on the outside looking in from NFL Network, and a lot of other NFL Network people, too. All right, when we come back, we'll hit the fan.
Mike's on. He's ready to go. On the Fan. New York Sports Radio. Mike's on. Mike's on. He'll get you the sports any way that he can. It's Mike Francesa on the Fan. Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM. WFAN.
All right, we hit you on the fan on a Tuesday evening, the 14th day of April. We'll take you till 6:30. Then you'll get the replay of the Yankee playoff game. Susan and John will take you through it. They'll, I'm sure, talk a little bit about the passing of Hank Steinbrenner. We already did that. They'll do it, I'm sure. Susan did it earlier today. So they knew him a lot better than I did, so they'll talk to you about him. I interviewed him a couple of times. I didn't really know him that well. Casamica Tequila, as always, brings you the program brought to you by those who drink it. As we come your way midway through the month of April, if you've watched what has gone on the last couple of days and your thoughts about sports play into this, because sports is obviously a part of this whole big equation as to how does that restart again, although it's on the outskirts of that because we can get some stuff back before we get sports back, because sports is going to be the tricky part. And you can put in that same tricky part concerts, movie theaters, anything where you're having big groups of people congregate. How that's going to happen, who the heck knows? And until you figure that out, we're going to have issues. See, the guys, whether you're talking about Governor Cuomo, whether you're talking about the Northeast governors, whether you're talking about the president, whether you're talking about industry leaders, whoever you're talking about right now, they all know, they're all looking at the numbers, they're all hearing the same thing. Guys, you're playing Russian roulette with this economy. You can't push this that far. We're going to have problems with our supply lines. We're going to have problems feeding people. We're going to have enormous problems. The money we gave you isn't enough. A lot of people haven't even gotten the money yet. We're going to have all kinds of civic issues, cultural issues, economic issues. They're talking about mortgage defaults. They're talking about credit card defaults. They're talking about massive, massive issues with shopping centers and everything else. So we know that before too long, they have got to say, okay, we tried this. Now we got to try something else. The problem is what they're all going to sit around and ask, and they're going to ask this one guy, they're going to say to Fauci, what's the damage if we decide to go? And he opened today with, I believe May 1st is a bit overly optimistic for especially certain areas of the country. We have, and this is where, I'm telling you right now, I got the president's press conference on right here in front of me. It'll go for about 90 minutes, or last night I went for 2.5 hours. If they don't address what is in this next sentence tonight, I am not turning this on again. Here's what Fauci said, and he's there tonight, I'm sure. We have to have something in place that is efficient and that we can rely on, and we're not there yet. Well, listen, he made that statement to the Associated Press today. So if I'm there tonight, or if you're there tonight and you're a reporter who is worth a damn, ask him tonight, what is it that we have to be efficient about? What do we need to rely on, and how do we get there? This idea that we never come up with any new information and we just go over what date everyone knew about it and who did what when, who cares anymore? Now we need to get to this thing. And here's what he said. Again, we have to have something in place that is efficient and that we can rely on, and we're not there yet. Okay. He's the number one pandemic doctor in the world. He is considered to be the foremost authority on these kind of diseases. He has been recognized widely in that regard. He's going to have a say in when things start back up. He doesn't like May 1st. But he also knows that, Doc, listen, we're playing here with something that's a time bomb. It's going to go off. It's probably gone off in a lot of ways already. We're trying to keep it down. And, we can open up. Hey, it does not help to open up Montana. It does not help to open up North and South Dakota, although we know that the NHL might go to the Dakotas. Okay, that's great. It does not help to open up Alaska. If you don't open up about 8 or 9 states where there clearly are a good number of cases, you don't have an economy anyway. The economy rests, 73% of the economy rests exactly where you're going to have your trouble spots. 73%. So nobody's fooling anybody. That's where the hot spots are, and that's where the economy is. And you can start right out here by looking out the window at the biggest city in the world. And the communities that embrace it, whether they're on Long Island or whether they're in Connecticut or whether they're in Westchester, whether they're in Bergen County or wherever they may be. So the president's saying, the president and the governors, listen, Cuomo's been edging for 2 days to say, listen, I know we got to get this kick-started. The president, and they can sit there and fight over who's going to kick-start it. Who cares? That's just stupid stuff. The bottom line is we all understand we all want to get going again and need to get going again. But what we need to know is when he waves the flag and says, no, guys, dangerous. Well, he's got to tell us what has to happen for this to happen. Or do you just say, Doc, we gave it our best shot, and now we're going to put the pressure on the hospitals and say a prayer and hope we get through this and hope that it gets warm enough in a lot of our country and that the virus goes away for a while until Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or some little laboratory somewhere comes up with a vaccine. Or at least a therapeutic in the meantime, and then a vaccine, 6 or 8 or 10 months from now. The governors have their coordinated plan in the Northeast to reopen. They already gave it to you. They started that yesterday. Everybody's ready to kickstart it. Now Fauci says no. Everyone was starting to throw around May 1st as the date. That's why Wall Street's gotten a little hot under the collar the last couple of days, because they think May 1st is the date. Everyone does. But now he's sitting there saying, too quick, we're not there yet. Need to be efficient. Need to have the plan in place. What's the plan? Is the plan something on your iPhone with Google and Apple and some app? Or what is it? Tell me what it is and how it works. Can't be giving everybody a test because that isn't happening. That's pie in the sky and it ain't happening. Listen, Pence was up there the first week and told you we'd have 5 million tests within a week. We haven't had 2 million tests, and it's already been 5 weeks. That's not happening. But what has to happen? That's what you need to hear tonight. If not, they're just wasting your damn time with these things. What has to happen? What do we need to happen to open in 2 weeks? We need the plan. What is the plan? And what has to happen? We have to have this many people going to the hospital each day. We have to have the death rate down to this many people. We have to only be having this many cases every night. Because right now we're still putting up a big number of cases every night, and we're still having a good number of people dying every night. The only thing we're seeing is fewer people going to the hospital. That is true. So the distancing and people staying home is working. But we can't stay here forever. But how do you come back? How many people to a car on the LIR? How many people in an elevator? How many people on a subway train? How many people in a restaurant? How many people in a movie theater? Supermarket? Broadway play? Ball game? Back after this. Governors both saying they're ready to open, and you got the president ready to run out and say he's ready to open, and then you got Fauci telling all of them you're not ready to open. So what's going to happen? And again, who cares whether, we don't, in all this stuff, we don't need a constitutional crisis here, that'll be made into an HBO movie in 2 years as to who had the power, president versus states' rights. Do you think the guy who can't feed his family gives a damn about the president's powers or the states' rights powers? Do you think he cares? He does not. Do you think the guy who doesn't have a job cares? Do you think the guy who spent 20 years building his business gives a damn who says, I opened it up, I closed it, I opened it? Who cares? Nobody cares. So stupid. It's offensive. And again, stop worrying about that. You see, the problem with this, and this is a perfect example of why I have always said there should only be a one-term, 6-year president. Because the president right now should have his eye on the ball about how to heal this country and get everybody back to work safely and not be worried about his reelection campaign. But he's running for reelection, and that is front and center, as it would be for any president. I'm not saying it wouldn't be, but the president has got to understand that if he doesn't do a good job in this area, it won't matter what happens with his campaign. This should be the most important thing on his plate. But that shouldn't be, this should not be a political issue right now. This should be an issue where it's about the public. And nobody cares about what the World Health Organization said and whether you want to try and blame them. Nobody in America cares about the World Health Organization. Nobody in America cares about who said what back in January. What we care about is how we get back to normal, or at least something that approaches normal safely in the near future, so people can go back to living their lives and get out of the house and get back to their careers and back to their businesses. I know people who own bars and restaurants and pubs, and you know what? They want to go back to work. They want to put their employees back to work. But they want to do it safely. They don't want to die doing it. Do you think for a second they care about whether or not the president can tag the World Health Organization with blame for this thing? Do you think they care even a little about that? Do you think they care who wins a battle between the president and the governors as to who gets to make the call on whether or not the business in a certain state is open again? When really, let's be theoretical about it. If you both said businesses are open and any business said, I'm not opening until my employees are safe, so I'm not opening, you couldn't do anything anyway. You can't compel them to open. You can tell them to close. You can't compel them to open. They can stay closed for as long as they want. They can stay closed to the 4th of July if they want. So this whole thing is stupid. And if the president thinks that on a night where people care about how they can get back to their lives, care about the fact that he's going to defund the World Health Organization as some answer to whose blame it is, come on, man, no one cares. It's just short-sighted and it's just ridiculous. Put Fauci up there and let's ask him the question, how you said we're not ready. What will it take for us to get ready? That's what we want to hear. That's exactly, he said it. The governors are ready to open. East Coast, West Coast. President, as you're hearing leak out of the White House, is ready to open May 1st. Okay? Fauci puts the brakes on everybody and says, no, we're not opening. We can't open. We're not ready. And they're not going to buck him, because you buck him, there's incredible liability. And he says we're not ready. Most of the U.S. not ready by May 1. Premature. Screaming headlines across the country tonight. Most of the U.S. not ready for reopen by May 1. So the question to him, and that's the question, what do you need? What do you have to have for it to work? And what's a reasonable plan? When? When can you have what you need? He says we need an efficient plan that can work. Otherwise, this could be nightmarish. We could be right back in the same position again. If we open too soon, we'll wish we never closed. We wish we never reopened. We wish we stay closed. That's a scary thought, especially when you realize people are still dying at 1,500 a night anyway, as it is right now. So they're not going to buck Fauci here. They're not going to do it. I don't think either party, I don't think the East Coast governors, I don't think the West Coast governors, I don't think the White House, nobody's going to buck Fauci here. So he's going to carry the ball. So the question that you want answered, and I guarantee you no one will get to it tonight, is what does he need? What plan does he need to see? What does he need to have happen that he will feel comfortable that we can open again? We're not there yet. Fauci told the Associated Press May 1 is a bit overly optimistic. We have to have something in place that is efficient and that we can rely on. And we're not there yet. Fine. Efficient? What has to be efficient? Mapping, testing, what kind of plan? They've talked about Apple and Google in this cooperative effort with a iPhone. Is that what we're talking about? We're talking about some kind of mapping? Are we talking about people getting tested? What are we talking about? And how do we get it in place so that we have to have something in place that is efficient and that we can rely on. And we're not there yet. We're not anywhere yet. We don't have anything that even resembles something. We might not have that for a month. You can tell me we're going to stay here for another month like this or 6 weeks like this? We won't have a country if we do that. So instead of these clowns worrying about the World Health Organization or whether or not the Supreme Court's going to decide who has the power, which is a bunch of garbage that nobody cares about, how about finding out from your lead doctor what he needs to give you the go-ahead? That's the only thing that should be on anybody's mind tonight, but it's not. It's not because it's all politics. And it's all, hey, I got to swing my base and I got to make my base realize that I wasn't wrong, I was right, I did the right thing. You know what? Those people care about themselves. And if they lose someone they love, they're never going to forgive you. And if they go broke and lose their business, they're never going to forgive you. And if they lose their job, they're never going to forgive you. And if they can't put food on their table, they're never going to forgive you. And that goes for governors, and that goes for senators, that goes for congressmen, that goes for the White House. Think about that person who hasn't gotten a check yet, who hasn't worked in a month. Or think about the person who got some money from their employer and it's gone. And now they've jacked up their credit card to the max. They can't do that anymore, and they don't have any more food. And they can't pay their rent. And they don't have any gas for the car. And that's just to go to the store or the pharmacy or for some place of necessity. And they don't know where to turn. So they turn on a television and they hear about the World Health Organization. Really? That's going to be a lot of solace to them. Or they hear about states' rights and the Supreme Court. That's going to really put food on their table and put something in their bellies. Have a damn clue. It's got to be about the people. They are hurting right now. They are worried. They are scared. They've had enough of this. And they want to move on. But they want to understand how they can move on. That's the information you hope to get. I hope to be surprised and hear that information tonight, but I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell I'll hear it. All right, on to more pleasant matters. You can hear a Yankee game tonight that'll bring back memories of halcyon days of yore. Better days than right now, but hopefully there's better days coming if we can ever get this baseball season started. The fan will have the game. John and Susan will give you all the highlights and all the remembrances, and I'm sure they'll talk a little bit about the passing, the tragic passing at the age of 63, way too early, of Hank Steinbrenner on this April the 14th. We'll see you tomorrow. Brought to you, as always, by the good folks at Casamigos Tequila. Brought to you by those who drink it.